Hello, everybody. Welcome back. The Northwest Sportscast. Hope you're all having a fantastic Monday. Almost done with the end of this month. Guys, we had a lot to talk about today. We're going to start
Yeah.
with the Mariners. As this off season is starting to wind down, spring training starts in under a month. That's when the pitchers, catchers will report. Under a month, still a lot of names that are available in free agency. Drew, I want to hear your perspective on this because what we've been told is the Mariners have about 15 million or so dollars that they can spend, and that's about as much as their budget is. So if you're Jerry Dipoto and you have $15 million, you look at the pool, a lot of guys available. Who are you targeting? Who are you going after?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are still on the table, either through trade or on the free agency block. A guy that is more than $15 million that still has not been signed. A guy who's very, very local to this part is Blake Snell. And I think he's a little bit out of our budget, if not a lot out of our budget. But that would be absolutely huge if we could kind of parlay Blake Snell addition with Brian Wu or Bryce Miller trade for another outfielder potentially or a middle infielder. Sorry, I think that'd be great. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways we could definitely go with this. I think a guy that I'm still really looking to see if we can acquire would be Bellinger. We'll see where he ends up going. I think that's a guy, Levi, that you have been kind of harping for this whole off season. I think that a Bellinger would be really good to go with a Canzone and a Mitch Haniger. Because although right now our outfielder in Canzone, Julio, and Mitch Haniger isn't exactly, the worst thing. It definitely doesn't pique my interest. Haniger is an older outfielder that is on his way down with a lot of injury history. And then on the other side, in left field, you have Canzone, who's kind of on the opposite end of the boat, not proven like Haniger is. He's on his way up, hopefully, and he has a lot of potential. He hits the ball hard, but against lefties, he can't really hit. He has a lot of kind of questionable at bats. His defense is lackluster at best. So there's a lot of not great things in this outfield still, even with the additions. So I think a guy like Bellinger, you bring him in, and then you can platoon Bellinger, Haniger, and Canzone in left and right field, and maybe even give Mitch Garver a rest days in DH here and there. I think that'd be really good.
Yeah, it's interesting because the market clearly these players want more than teams are willing to pay. And I think part of it is the whole, root sports, Bally Sports going out of not going out of business, but basically Bally Sports is broke. Root Sports is nearing that point. And so teams are not able to bank on that money coming from TV deals. And so now they're just not willing to spend like they have been. And so like Cody Bellinger wants $20 million a year. He's probably not going to get that. Like, I'm not sure when he's going to realize that he's not going to get that and just sign for less. Like Teoscar Hernandez, he wanted a multi-year contract for 20 million a year, and there was no single team that was willing to pay that, which is why he settled for 1 year for 23. That's what these players are going to have to do. Like Whit Merrifield, he wants 12 million. He's not getting 12 million.
Yeah.
Like Blake Snell, he wants 25 million a year. He's not going to get that. And eventually, these players are either going to have to realize that or what? You're just not going to have a job, and then you're going to get paid nothing. So I don't
Yeah.
know where the market's going to land, but
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. Eventually, these players are going to have to make a decision, and pitchers are going to report in, I think it's less than a month, Levi. These decisions are going to have to be made, and they're going to have to be made very, very soon. Blake Snell, even a guy like Matt Chapman, Bellinger, they're going to have to make a decision. I would love to get a Chapman. I would love to get a Blake Snell, a Bellinger at 25 million. That's not going to get it done. But if it goes down to 17, 18 million dollars for one of those guys, I think that's right around your budget. And I know the number is somewhere around 15, but I think if you could scoop up a Blake Snell for $18 million a year, he wants to be here. I feel like you should do that. Am I wrong? I mean, you have Gilbert, Kirby, Castillo, and Snell.
no, Drew, you are not wrong. There's a lot of people, Mariners fans, who would tell you that you are wrong, but you are not wrong. When you have an opportunity to add a player who has won multiple Cy Young awards, I'm sorry, you have to take it. I don't care that he walks a lot of batters. I don't care that he only pitches 5, 6 innings a game. He had won multiple Cy Young awards for a
Yeah.
reason. Like people act like Blake Snell is like some kind of average pitcher, and that we'd be overpaying to get him. He's not average. He won multiple Cy Young awards. Average pitchers don't do that. And the idea that fans are smarter than the awards voters, fans are smarter than the people who are actually covering the game of baseball and voting for this, not us, but the actual like MLB veteran reporters who
Yeah.
voted for him not once but twice for the Cy Young. And there's fans on the internet who will say he's overrated. Oh, he's just a bum. Oh, he got lucky. He's an overpay. No, I'm sorry. Those people are wrong. Blake Snell would obviously be a good fit on the Mariners. You're doubling down on your strengths with his pitching, and what's the worst case scenario? You sign Blake Snell. Oh, okay. He's like what? Your third best starter? Okay, sign me up. Like,
Yeah. No,
I don't
literally.
like Drew. Do you think like what's the worst case scenario that could happen? Well, oh, Brian Wu has to move to the bullpen for a little bit. Okay, you upgrade the bullpen too. That's great. Like,
Worst case scenario is Blake Snell gets injured, but I mean, you could say that about where we are right now. Our worst case scenario right now is that George Kirby gets injured for the first time in his career, and then where do you go for your fifth starter?
yeah, exactly.
So,
Or Castillo. If Castillo gets
yeah.
injured, then massive, massive.
And this is a really good move as far as getting better, but it also helps you with a little bit of insurance, and then you have six, like I think borderline, like that is the best starting pitching rotation in baseball, undoubtedly. If we get Blake Snell, and I don't think just because our pitching's good doesn't mean it can't get better. I think that's a really dumb way to look at it. An improvement is an improvement. I understand we have holes at third base, some would argue, first base, middle infield. There's a lot of things this team can still get better on. But that doesn't mean that this part of the team can't get better. You know, I'm a chef, Levi, right? And when I make my food, you make your steak, your green beans, your potatoes. And just because your green beans and potatoes might be lackluster doesn't mean you should just completely blow off the steak that's pretty good. You can still make that steak better. And that's the best part of
Yeah,
the meal right now. That doesn't mean that you can't add salt and pepper to that and enhance that despite the lackluster performance by the two sides. Blake Snell would do that to the steak. It's a
yeah.
really good pitching rotation right now, but it doesn't mean it can't get better. And I think it'd be really, really useful for it to get better. To respond to your first question, Levi, I got that I'm kind of still surprised he's on the market for someone who was injured for a year, but has a lot of success. And he's a first baseman that could rival Ty France for the starting position. He probably would start over Ty France, would be Reese Hoskins. Levi, what do you feel? What do you feel about that?
I would say before we signed Mitch Garver and traded for Luke Raley, I was all aboard the Reese Hoskins for 6 million on a 1 year prove it deal sort of thing, which again is probably what he's gonna get. Like Reese Hoskins wants big money, not gonna get it. Sorry, you didn't play last year.
What do you think he's gonna get, Levi?
I think he's gonna get around $6 to $8 million on a 1 year prove it deal from some
That's low. That's low. I feel like.
maybe he pushes 10, but with now that we have Garver kind of as your full-time DH, and now that you have Luke Raley, who's also going to play some first base, now I'm kind of like, I don't see how are they all going to get their at bats as first
I know,
baseman.
but I feel like Hoskins is better than Rayleigh. No.
Hoskins, I think in his prime, he was better than Raley. Yeah. But then like, again, the question is like, so you're going to carry now all of a sudden France becomes a liability to your roster because carrying a backup first baseman who also like can't play any other positions,
Yeah.
that's like a big roster spot that you're kind of almost wasting.
I
Now,
know.
if we wanted to trade France, but I think the time has passed to trade France. I don't know. Maybe there's still a team out there that would be interested.
So Levi, I'm gonna lift off. What do you think our biggest weakness is right now? The biggest hole we need to fill. I think it's probably second base.
I
What do
would
you?
I would say third base, but I would say this. I think we have the depth between Dylan Moore, Sam Haggerty, and a couple guys in the minors, Ryan Bliss, who I think is going to make an impact on the team this year. I think we have the depth to overcome if Luis Urias struggles, like I think there's a pretty good chance that he might struggle. And if that happens, I think we have the depth. So I wouldn't say we need a third baseman. I would say our
Yeah.
biggest weakness overall is that I still think this lineup is a Julio Rodriguez injury away from being one of the worst lineups in baseball. I don't see, because I think with Julio in the lineup, that makes JP a little bit better. That makes Cal a little bit better. It makes Mitch Garver a little bit better because they're gonna, now the pitchers are saving their best stuff for Julio. If you take Julio away, I'm worried that, without him the lineup will fall apart. And so I think that with this $15 million, the best way to spend it, put it all into one player, an offensive player who can really kind of be your number 2B, because you have Julio as your number one, and then I guess JP is your number two. So I think
Yeah.
we need to add another number two to this lineup to keep that from happening.
Yeah. So Levi, I have a list of all of the free agents that are still on the board. I can start with third if you think that's where we should head.
Yeah, start with third.
I personally think it should be second. Either way, be good to upgrade. So this is based off of WAR. So 7.6 wins above replacement still on the market is Matt Chapman, and he's probably going to go for upwards of $20 million, maybe maybe less than that, but somewhere around the 17 to 25. That's what I would think. Would you look into Chapman, Levi?
Depending on his market, I would look into Chapman.
Yeah, I think you'd be a fool not to.
Yeah.
Chapman's a guy that has shown a lot of, just ability to hit the baseball really, really hard, which is something that now all of a sudden your team is a lot of contact and not a lot of power. Where last year was kind of the opposite. So I think Matt Chapman would be a good turn. A guy that's a lot older, 39 years old. It's JT, Justin Turner. He's at 3.6 wins above replacement. I think it's a little bit too old for me. He's on the decline. I would bet that he has a huge down year again this year. So I'd stay away from Justin Turner.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he had a good season with the Red Sox last year. He also did not play third base for more than like 20 games.
Yeah.
They had Devers playing third. So Justin Turner was basically a first base / DH for them. And he did hit
Yeah.
pretty well. But A, he's 39, and B, I don't trust his ability to play solid defense at third anymore. So yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't go there.
I'm just gonna list through the next few guys because the list starts to get pretty bare very quickly. You got Gio Urshela, Josh Donaldson, Evan Longoria, Eduardo Escobar, and then you got a few guys that are kind of on the lower ends of things in Brian Anderson, Gene Segura, Matt Duffy, etc.
I
Does
mean,
any of those guys pique your
I would
interest?
say if you wanna sign for like $4 million, maybe take a swing at Gio Urshela. I don't think he's a starter, but he could compete with Urias for that third base job. He could add to the depth. Or maybe offer a minor league invitation to a guy like Gene Segura, Brian Anderson. Just see. I mean, the thing about minor league invitations is you can never really give out too many of them, because the worst case scenario is they don't play well in spring training, you cut them, and then that's fine. Or the best case scenario is they do play well, you put them on the Rainiers, and they agree to go to the Rainiers because that's the only option left for them. And then when a guy gets hurt, they come up and they, do what Mike Ford did, or do what, plenty of guys come up from AAA and
Yeah.
rake in the second half of the season. That happens every year. So
Yeah, I agree. A problem with a lot of those guys is they're all in their mid 30s.
yeah,
Other than maybe a Brian Anderson, who is currently 30 years of age. But even him, I'm looking at his Savant page right now, is
he had
not
a
great
really bad
stuff.
season last year.
Yeah, it hit 226. He had a few really good seasons to start his career in 2017 through 2019, and then hasn't really caught that lightning in a bottle since then. You could take a crack at him for a few $1 million maybe, but I think third base, I would look at Chapman.
Yeah,
I
Chapman's
feel
the
like
guy there.
that's feel like that's a clear first pick, but he's going to cost you a lot more.
Who are the
Up,
second basemen on the market?
up the middle, second baseman, you got a guy that's been kind of, haunting T-Mobile Park for a while, Elvis Andrus, 35 years old, 4.6 wins above replacement, still on the market. You got Whit Merrifield, Tony Kemp, Colton Wong, Adam Frazier, and bring him back. Jonathan Shoup, and that's about it. You got Josh Harrison and Hanser Alberto.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Drew, none of those guys really interest me.
So
Um,
what's your problem with Merrifield, Levi?
Elvis Andrews. So with Whit Merrifield, I would sign him for like 8 million, $7 million. I don't know how much he's asking for. I think Merrifield is the only guy who really had a shot at being like a productive hitter. Like maybe Elvis Andrews. I don't know.
Yeah, Whit Merrifield, he's performed in back-to-back seasons.
And look, I caught a lot of flack on Twitter this weekend for making the bold claim that Whit Merrifield would be an upgrade over Dylan Moore as your utility guy. Apparently, Mariners fans are
Well,
very
that's just dumb.
well, but
That
Drew, you see, Drew, the WRC Plus says that
Oh,
Moore
yes,
is
of course, of
projected.
course.
He's
Okay.
projected. So the projected stats nerds out there, the computer knows more than actual baseball,
Yeah,
obviously.
I'm sure.
But yeah, no. Look, Merrifield's not great, obviously, but what he does do is he at least gets hits. Pretty consistently, he gets hits. So,
He's hitting 272 with
but Drew,
547 at bat.
what was his wins above replacement?
His wins above replacement were three.
0.7.
I have three.
Three from where? Where are you getting that?
Oh, three is his career. Yeah,
Career.
last
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
See, in his career, despite getting all the hits, the WAR hates Whit Merrifield.
Yeah.
Also, you could talk about there are some aspects of WAR that aren't great. But the reason that WAR hates Whit Merrifield is because A, he doesn't hit for power, and B, his defense is not very good. So
But do
WAR
you think
counters
do you
that
think
in a
he's better
lot.
than a Rojas? Because I do.
Personally, I do. Again, though, Drew, the projected WAR thinks that Rojas is a much better
But what's
player.
the downside of bringing in Merrifield? And
Exactly.
ever
Exactly, Drew. I agree with you. I'm just saying these are the arguments I've been hearing.
I understand. I'm saying even if you think Rojas is better, there is zero downside to getting
Yeah.
Merrifield for $6 million. We have about 16 million bucks to spare. You tell me right now that Rojas and Canzone and Urias, and all these guys and Ty France and Raleigh and all these people are gonna just perform and they're just gonna hit 270 all year with a 3 WAER or 3 WAR. They're gonna play great defense. They're gonna hit 20 plus home runs. Like that's not gonna happen.
No, it's not.
That's
So
not gonna happen. What's gonna happen? What likely is going to happen is that one of the guys that we got this offseason who are kind of like, the Luke Rileys of the world or the Urias or any of those guys, one of those guys might be semi-productive. The others will either be really bad and we won't see them again, or they'll be in Tacoma. And then a guy like Rojas and Canzone, I doubt that both those guys are productive this year. Do like what are the odds? What are the odds there are like, you know what I'm trying to say? So if Merrifield
I
gets
feel you. Between Rojas, Urias, Canzone, Mitch Haniger, Luke Rayleigh, out of those five guys, I would say there's a decent chance that two of them will be good, one will be average, and two will be bad. That's kind of the law of averages in baseball, right? Not every single player you acquire is going to reach his projected totals. Like players underperform and players also overperform.
and you've seen that the last 2 years with our second basemen we've gotten.
Wong was meant to be good. The projections loved Colton Wong last year. And
Everything pointed to Colton Wong hitting 280 with, great defense and second base. And then the same thing with Adam Frazier. And both those things did not happen. So why would you put all your eggs in one basket when you can put them in multiple and then hope one of those guys does well? I don't know if Merrifield is going to be great, but if Merrifield goes to another team and he hits 270 again with solid defense,
and meanwhile Rojas is hitting 220 and
that's an improvement to me. So and even if Merrifield does bad, but then Rojas does great, then fine. You had your insurance blanket. Merrifield played some in the early part of the season and now he's on the bench. I just feel like it's not that much of a game changer to me where it's like, oh, well, we have Dylan Moore and we have Rojas. Like, who cares? Like, get in Merrifield. Like, I haven't even got into the shortstops where you could probably swing them at second
Yeah.
base. Like you have Ahmed Rosario, you have
I
Brandon
think,
Crawford,
and I really like Ahmed Rosario. I've said this before on this podcast.
you have, yeah, Ahmed Rosario, 28 years old. He's on the younger side of things. He's, a career 2.9 WAR. I mean, this is a guy that you put him in our team, and he's probably hitting top six, in the lineup right now. He's better than Rojas. He's better than Dylan Moore. He's better than Urias. There's a chance he's better than Crawford this year, Levi.
But Drew, his OPS plus was only 89 last year. He's below average.
Wait, no way.
Yeah, that's
Well,
the stats.
let's look at JP Crawford's OPS out of everything but this last year. How about that?
Okay.
Because like oh my god, there's just I can't stand some Mariner fans. Like my biggest pet peeve, Levi, is the Mariner fans that think that everything will go right. And then when things go wrong, then they're surprised. But no, that is not how you should be looking at this team right now. You should be looking at this team with the expectation that things will go wrong. There will be an injury to one of our top, 5 players. It will happen. It happens every year to almost every team.
By the way, you know who gets injured every single year?
Who?
Dylan Moore. Every year.
Yeah. So why can't Merrifield be the Dylan Moore of this next year? Like,
exactly.
Ahmed Rosario, the stats weren't amazing from last year. They weren't terrible. He had 265 with Cleveland and then 256 with LA. But that's still an improvement from a lot
batting
of our
average is a stat that only people care about from 1950. You must be just as an old grandpa if you think batting average is really a good stat.
Yeah, 675 OPS with a 709 OPS in Dodgers, 88 and 89 OPS plus. I mean, these stats aren't amazing. He only had 6 home runs last year. But again, I just don't see the downside. I don't know. I could be completely wrong, but
here's the other argument that I've heard, and I want to hear your take on this because I think this argument is a bad argument. But what I've heard from some people when I would say, so you say you don't want to sign Whit Merrifield, you don't want to sign anybody. So what would you do with those $15 million? Are you going to hoard the money? And what the people have told me is that they would rather wait to spend until the middle of the season when somebody gets hurt or somebody is struggling, and then we can use the money to trade for a player that another team doesn't want to pay. And so then we can essentially take on a salary dump. That way we wouldn't have to trade prospects. We could take on a salary dump. Personally, I think that's absurd. You'd rather not pay a free agent now. You'd rather wait till the middle of the season and then take the salary dump. You're just going to take take a player that another team doesn't want?
Yeah. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, Levi, but I believe there are 2 halves to an MLB season, and if you only have the guy for half of the season, then that guy becomes half as productive for your team. Because although the playoffs are in the second half of the year, I'm pretty sure the first half. Wait, I could be missing something. Clear up if I'm wrong, but I think that when you make the playoffs, a game in April counts for the same amount as a game in September, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, Drew. That is accurate.
Wait, correct me again. How many games behind were we last year of missing the playoffs?
We were 1 game.
1. Okay, great. So now we got these cleared up. So we're 1 game short of the playoffs. So any game in April, May, June, any game in April, May, or June, we win, we are now in the playoffs. And you're going to come to me and say we should get a guy halfway through the season? I say you're crazy. I think the first priority is making the playoffs. I don't think it's time to worry about let's just get the best, the best playoff, roster possible. No, let's get into the playoffs first. I think it's absurd.
But then again, Drew, there's the other argument that says if the Mariners had Jose Caballero the whole season instead of paying La Stella $4 million to play for a month, maybe the difference of La Stella and Caballero in April wins us 1 more game, and then we were in the playoffs. So then it's if Whit Merrifield is this year's Tommy La Stella, which personally I don't think he would be, because I think Tommy LaStella hadn't been good for 4 years. Whit Merrifield was an all-star last year, so there's a big difference there.
So who is this year's Caballero?
Brian Bliss,
Yeah, I
I
think
think.
it's obvious.
But
Yeah.
but again, you say that it's like, okay, well, the same fans would probably rather have Haggerty than Ryan Bliss on the opening day roster, anyways. So Haggerty, who has never had a good stretch of more than like 50 at bats, but yet we treat him like he's like this amazing player.
Yeah, and a Haggerty or a Marlowe or those types of guys,
Not moving the needle.
they can step in for a couple of weeks and they can
Exactly.
surprise some MLB teams and they can hit really well, but they're not your long-term solutions. And a
As
guy like Ahmed
soon as they
Rosario
get
or Merrifield,
exposed
they
to
could.
pitching,
So I
as
think
soon as they get exposed to pitching,
that's all I have to say on this matter, Levi. I think our $15 million should either go to a big bat in Matt Chapman or a pitcher in Blake Snell. I think you'd be crazy to not get one of those guys
yeah.
if you could sign him for under $20 million.
Bottom line, aim for those guys, and if you miss out on those guys, spend it on 2 or 3
Yes.
players
Yeah.
who can at least compete for a job.
Yes. A guy like Rosario or Merrifield or any of the names we've listed, those are the types of guys that in mid-August when you have multiple injuries and somehow Rojas has played 24 games straight, those are the guys that you really wish you had, and you can eliminate those problems by getting guys right now. And I don't think that foresight to see the things that may go wrong, I think that's a huge flaw in a lot of fans right now, is to just think that everything will go right. But I think you have to plan for things to go wrong. And I think it's time for you know, I think it's time for the GM, to step up. I know we're not getting much money here, but hey, we got $16 million. Let's use it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the bottom line is right now we're about the 5th or 6th best team in the AL, and that means we're a borderline. I think we would be in the playoffs in maybe like 60% of scenarios, but for that other 40%, you want to give yourself as much cushion as you can.
Yeah, especially when these big free agents are still on the board, because you could turn from this. You could be the 5th or 6th best team in the AL right now, and tomorrow you could be the 8th best team in the AL, and that's the huge difference. So, yeah.
All right, Drew. I want to touch on the Seahawks really quick. News today: Shane Waldron, offensive coordinator, he is apparently going to take the Bears job to be their offensive coordinator. Do you think that Seahawks are losing Waldron, or is this a net positive for us? And the question is, if he was such a bad offensive coordinator for us, why would the Bears want him so badly? And did we make a mistake potentially in not, giving him more of an opportunity here?
Yeah. I don't think it was that bad with us. I think it was actually, he got better with Geno Smith than he was with Russell Wilson. With that being said, I think when we fired Pete Carroll, I was pro, let's just move on from everybody and let's just kind of clear ship and move forward. I think this is a good move for the Bears. I think it's a good move for the Seahawks. And I think it's a good move for Shane Waldron. And bottom line, I don't think this matters that much. I think that getting a new offensive coordinator with hopefully a new quarterback, because that's what I've been advocating for, I think is probably the best option anyways. If we keep Geno Smith and don't draft a quarterback, then you start to get into the territory of possibly this was a mistake to get rid of Shane Waldron, because now all of a sudden Geno Smith and all those guys have to learn a new offense. But, end of the day, I really didn't have much emotional attachment either way to Shane Waldron. I wasn't really banging my head too much against the wall saying, why have we not run the ball more? I mean, granted, there was times where that happened. And I wasn't just like, oh my God, this guy is electric. His play calls are just so dynamic. So, you can kind of look at it both ways, but I think this was probably a good move.
Yeah, I mean, my gripe with Waldron was always I thought he was really bad situationally. I thought, he devises really good game plans, and in the first quarter he does really well, and then by the time the defense kind of catches on, the offense starts to get worse. And then when we did face those big third downs, those 4th and 3s that we had to convert, a lot of those times those are the plays that we weren't able to make. So I thought, his situational play calling was not very good. There's a
Yeah.
chance he goes to the Bears and gets Caleb Williams and has the number one offense, and people look at the Seahawks like we're idiots for not promoting him to head coach. But because it's the Bears, I honestly am like not that worried. If it was like, the Patriots or the Lions or like some team that has been on an upward trajectory lately, I would be like, oh, like that's like worrisome. But it's the Bears who literally haven't made a good decision in years. I'm like, yeah, I'm not too mad that we lost him.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, when a guy like Kenneth Walker runs for 100 yards and a half, and then gets 4 attempts the next half,
Next half, exactly.
it's those types of things that make me question Shane Waldron. But then you look at some of the play designs, and yeah, they're creative. And he made it. Geno Smith is not an elite quarterback, and sometimes he made Geno Smith look really, really good. So it can go both ways.
Yeah, exactly. It can definitely go both ways there. But yeah, that you make a good point though. That points to the fact that we're probably drafting a quarterback because if the plan was to keep Geno, I'm not sure. I think we would have made more of an effort to keep the same offense in place. So now the other thing though is maybe this points to that we're gonna try to hire Dave Canales because Geno does already know him. But I don't know. I think we're drafting. I really think we're drafting a quarterback.
What's the chances that we keep Geno Smith and draft a quarterback? I think pretty high.
High. Oh, very high. But I think the plan is not for Geno to be the long-term starter. He'll be the starter day
right
one.
now, Levi, if I told you this, right, I'm going to do two scenarios. Scenario A, we draft a quarterback, keep Geno. Geno starts the whole year. And then the following year, the rookie quarterback turns into the sophomore quarterback and starts. Or Geno Smith starts the year, halfway through the season, the rookie quarterback starts and finishes it out. Which one do you think is more likely, and which one would you rather have?
Well, it ultimately depends on how Geno plays. If Geno's winning games, then you keep him around. I mean, the Chiefs drafted Mahomes, sat him for a whole year behind Alex Smith. If Alex Smith had gone 2-10 to start the season, that might not have been what they did. But Alex Smith went 10-6, made it to the playoffs. That's why they were able to keep Mahomes on the bench the whole season. So, I mean, if Geno plays well and we're in the playoff hunt again, then yeah, keep him starting. If Geno starts the season 3-7, then you turn to the rookie. But I think I think Geno's our day one starter next year. I would say I'm like 90% sure, and I'm not that. I mean, I'm fine with that. Like, I would not be mad that if he's the day one starter.
We are going to be talking about two teams that were awfully disappointing this year in Seattle. That is, of course, the Seattle Mariners and the Seattle Seahawks. Both teams very disappointing. Both teams barely missing out of the playoffs by just one game after making the playoffs the year prior. So, Levi, the question I will ask you is which one of these two teams had the more disappointing season?
Drew, I think the Seattle Seahawks had the more disappointing season. Now, I have a lot of points. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I know I would disagree with that, but I want to hear your side of the argument first. So
Yeah.
let's see what you got.
So first off, Drew, the Mariners play in a division with the defending World Series champions and the 2022 World Series champions.
Yeah, the Niners are pretty bad. The Niners are pretty bad.
Now,
Yeah.
who is the Seahawks' biggest opponent, Drew? It's Mr. Irrelevant. Brock Purdy? Come on. And an aging Matt Stafford. That's our biggest opponents in our division. But you say, well, okay, to be fair, neither teams are the best in their division. How about the rest of the league? How about the wild cards? The Mariners were a game behind the Blue Jays and about 4 or 5 games behind the Rays. The Blue Jays and the Rays have been really good organizations for a long time. They're not rebuilding teams. They're teams with a lot of veteran players. The Seahawks missed out on the playoffs because of a tiebreaker with the Packers. The Packers are the youngest team in the NFL. There is no excuse for a first-year starter in Jordan Love with a bunch of rookies to have a better team than you guys as the Seahawks. And then my third argument...
Just won a game and then just almost took the Niners.
They did.
In their house.
And I think that the Seahawks should have been better than the Niners. And the third argument is, look,
no, you don't believe that.
I think they should have been better than the Packers.
The Niners? You said the Niners.
Oh, sorry, the Packers. And
Yeah.
and my third argument, Drew, and this is what I think is my best point. The Mariners are operating on a limited budget. So no matter how good they do, you know that they could do better if they were allowed to spend like the rest of the league. The Seahawks are not operating on said budget. They are allowed to spend money. They are allowed to make big trades like Leonard Williams, and yet they still, with the second highest paid defense in the NFL, they still couldn't figure out a way to make the playoffs. And they are not on a restricted budget the way the Mariners are. So that is why I think the Seahawks had the more disappointing season. I want to hear why you thought the Mariners did.
Yeah, it's a good point. And before I just start, picking apart your arguments, I will first go with why the Seahawks had why the Mariners had the more disappointing season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty simple in my mind. It's because the Mariners, they had more expectations going into this year than the Seattle Seahawks did.
See,
And,
I
and I,
disagree.
I think that's pretty clear. The Seahawks barely snuck into the playoffs as, a 9-win team a year ago. They needed everything to go right. And what happened? Everything went right and they made the playoffs. And then going into this year, the Seattle Seahawks, did they improve? Yes, but they had Geno Smith at the helm. I wasn't really expecting much. I was expecting, maybe a fringe wild card team. From the Mariners, I was legitimately expecting an AL West victory. And that's where my expectations are and where a lot of the fan base was at. And a team that had a superstar in Julio Rodriguez, something that the Seahawks do not have, underperformed for most of the year outside of August, had multiple different injuries, played terrible in September and to start the year, and overall just played, in the biggest moments, the Seattle Mariners did not play well. And this is a team that, a guy like Colton Wong, I think you said he was the most disappointing player in all of Seattle sports, Levi.
I did. I did say that.
So, what you have Colton Wong. So, if he's the most disappointing player, I think he's on the most disappointing team. The Seattle Mariners had so much expectations going into the year that personally, I don't know where your head's at. I just don't think the Seahawks had. I think the Seahawks were fringe first round exit playoffs. The Seattle Mariners, a lot of people, not just me. I didn't think they were going to the World Series, but I watched MLB Network in March, and they had a Padres Mariners matchup in the World Series. The World Series they had the Mariners going to. Who in their right mind had the Seahawks going to the Super Bowl?
Well, I had them in the NFC Championship game.
And I think I still think that is absolutely ridiculous. But, regardless, these are two teams that underperformed heavily. And I think the Mariners had more star power. I think they had a better, obviously we're comparing sports here, but I think they had a better overall team than the Seattle Seahawks did. And the biggest thing I think they had was that superstar in Julio Rodriguez, something that a guy like Geno Smith just didn't have.
So let me ask you, Drew. So the Mariners obviously have the better superstar player. But go through the teams.
Clear.
At the start of the season, how many good players would you say the Mariners had? Like, how many players on the Mariners did we think, okay, he's a good player?
Okay. Ty France.
Yeah.
Julio Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
Cal Raleigh. He was a top 10 catcher going into the year.
Cal. I say Cal. Cal works. JP probably, right?
JP going into the year. Colton Wong.
Going into the yeah, that's true. That's a fair point. Colton Wong.
Now we've X'd off center field, first base, second base, shortstop, and catcher.
You could say Teoscar too. You could say Teoscar Hernandez as well.
You would have, another guy that I hadn't even mentioned that underperformed heavily. And going into last year, Eugenio Suarez, although maybe wasn't an elite player, I think many people had him as a top 15 third baseman in the league pretty clearly.
Okay, so you have 7 good players on offense, and then pitching.
You don't even need. I'd be here all night if I had to list pitching. I don't know where you're going with this.
Yeah, no, there's okay. Ryan Wu and Bryce Miller were not good players going into the season. You had 3 good players going: Gilbert, right, Castillo, Kirby, and then you had Seawald and Munoz in the bowl. I mean, so they had 12 good players you thought going into the season. How for the Seahawks? You think you could name more than 12 good players the Seahawks have?
I hope so, because there's 24 guys or there's 22 guys that play starting the ball. So I hope you can name more because I'm working with 14.
Yeah, I mean, go through the Seahawks. You have two receivers who we think are good, right? A quarterback who just had a really good season. Geno Smith counts here as a good player. Kenneth Walker, good player. Your tight end, Noah Fant, coming off of a really good season, good
No,
player. Yes. Yes.
he's an average at tight end, average at best.
Okay, then let's take Suarez off the list, buddy.
No, because
If we're talking average, I said
you think Suarez had a less productive year in 2022 than Noah Fant did?
Suarez was about the 10th best third baseman in 2022. Noah Fant was about the 10th best tight end in 2022.
10th?
Yes.
No.
Noah Fant had a really good season 2022.
Oh, that's just ridiculous, Levi. That's ridiculous. That's just plain ridiculous.
The offensive line, okay, Charles Cross and Abe Lucas both coming off of really good rookie seasons. That counts as good players. Now you're up to 7.
Okay, we had some guys. Like, I agree with you.
And then go to the defense. Jamal, Quandre, Bobby. I mean, Devin Witherspoon, Julian Love, who was coming off of a good season.
You cannot say Jamal. You cannot say Jamal.
Going into the season, everybody thought Jamal was a good player.
Going into 2020, going into this year.
Yes.
He didn't play. No, I didn't think so.
You didn't think so. You didn't think that getting Jamal back was going to be a good addition to the team.
Yeah, I thought that'd be great. I also thought Sam Haggerty coming back would be a good addition to the
team. No, you did not.
Yes, I did.
No.
I was an advocate for one of the reasons why we didn't make a deeper playoff run in 2022 2022 was because Sam Haggerty got hurt to end the year, and I think he was a really
remember in May we sent Sam Haggerty down because he was hitting 060.
Yeah, and you remember when Jamal Adams did actually nothing this year?
Like, I remember, but going into the season, we thought Jamal was going to be good.
No, we didn't.
Most of us did.
He was hurt, Levi.
And the last time we'd seen him play, he was one of the best players in our defense.
He came in for the first game, and what was the first thing he did?
Got a concussion.
Went off the field for another 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's true. But
I guess adds to your argument because you think this team, because you think the Seahawks are more disappointing. So
exactly. No, I do. And
that was a pretty disappointing thing about Jamal Adams to get hurt again.
It was very disappointing to see a Pro Bowl safety turn into a.
No one was picking the Seahawks to go to the Super Bowl, and there were people picking the Mariners to go to the Super Bowl.
There was not anyone picking the Mariners to the Super Bowl, but
I mean, there was more people picking the Mariners to the Super Bowl than the Seahawks were.
But for the playoffs, pretty much everyone thought the Seahawks were a playoff team this year. And it's easier to make the playoffs in the NFL. You get one extra spot. The Mariners only have 6 chances. Seahawks have 7.
Yeah, I see what you're trying to say. Like the Seahawks still won 9 games.
And
the Seahawks were 9-8. There were 2 teams in their division who made the playoffs.
Yeah. So one of them was the rebuilding Rams. There's no reason why the rebuilding Rams should have beaten us twice.
The rebuilding Rams almost beat the Detroit Lions, who are playing your.
We also beat. We beat the Lions too, though. So
great. So we're not disappointing. Perfect.
So we should have
the argument, Levi.
So if we
You're right. We didn't beat the Lions. We beat the Lions. We beat the Eagles. We barely lost to the Cowboys.
So what I'm saying, Drew, is if we beat the Rams,
what I'm saying is that's not a disappointing year. A disappointing year would be we go.
No, that is disappointing.
Going 7-10 is disappointing. Going 9-8.
Going 9-8 is because Drew, if you make a kick against the Rams, then you are the ones playing the Lions, and you could beat the Lions. Then we could
exactly
right now.
So I had us at 10 wins. We won 9, and we were a kick away from going to 10 wins. So how was that disappointing?
The disappointment is that
I had the Mariners, Levi. I had the Mariners winning the AL West, and we couldn't get a wild spot.
I guess the heat of this debate is that I did not expect the Mariners to win the AL West. I thought we would be a wild card team, and we missed it by 1 game. I thought the Seahawks would win the NFC West, and instead we didn't even make the playoffs. So our expectations were very different on both of these teams.
I think you're silly to not think the Mariners.
I thought the Astros were better than us going into the season. I still do. Going into the season, after getting swept by the Astros in the playoffs, you thought we were going to beat the Astros this year?
I just don't know how you can look at Tommy LaStella, Colton Wong, all of those guys, Sam Haggerty, Jarrett Kelenic, Robbie Ray getting injured, like Eugenio Suarez underperforming. I mean, the list goes on, and think that team didn't underperform more than the Seahawks, who had guys like Devin Witherspoon absolutely shine. You have all three wide receivers had a good year. K9 got better. You got, I mean, I can continue. The only guy I could think truly underperformed was Geno Smith and Jamal Adams to a certain degree. But I didn't think Jamal Adams was going to
Bobby
be great.
Wagner, Quandre Diggs. There's a lot of guys who
Bobby Wagner not underperformed. He's a freaking
Tyler
all
Lockett
pro.
underperformed.
Who?
Tyler Lockett underperformed.
No, he did not.
All three of our tight ends underperformed. The entire offensive line, the entire
No,
defensive line. I mean, the
no.
Seahawks had a lot of players underperform this
The
season.
Seahawks had holes going into the year. That doesn't mean they underperformed.
No, the offensive line got like
No.
3 times worse than 2022. That's underperformed.
Yeah, okay.
And the Seahawks are the ones that have the Hall of Fame head coach. The Mariners, Scott Service is good. He's not a Hall of Fame head coach.
Yeah, well, the Hall of Fame head coach just got fired, so
Yeah, it's true, but he wouldn't have gotten fired if Jason Myers makes 1 kick. So
I don't know. I think the Seahawks clearly, for a lot of people outside of Seattle, we're not a team that we're going to go any farther than the wild card round. And I think for a lot of people outside of Seattle, for the Mariners, they had us going to the ALCS, maybe even this World Series. And I didn't see those picks outside of, I guess, you, who had the Seahawks going to the NFC Championship. So
I saw a lot of those picks. I saw
really,
a lot of those picks.
you saw a lot of Geno Smith to the Super Bowl picks.
Not the Super Bowl, but I saw a lot of picks that we'd win the division.
But I saw Mariners to the World Series, Levi.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, those people, they can have their opinions, but I did not see a World Series team preseason, and I thought we were a playoff team. I didn't think we were a World Series team.
Yeah, I guess to each their own. This argument does seem kind of redundant. We need to get a third guy in here
Yeah, we do.
to kind of make a.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you want to be that.
Yeah, you guys can be our third guy. You have to let us know what you guys think. Comment down below. But yeah, I think both teams bottom line underperformed, and that's kind of where we're at. So
yeah, the bottom line is 2023 was rough for the Seahawks and Mariners, but 2024, right now, I'm not sure if it'll be much better, but we'll see.
we'll see. We'll see for sure. So thanks for watching, guys. This is the NW Sportscast. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Really, really does help out the channel a lot. We appreciate it. And as always,
go Seahawks and go Mariners.